To help ease the fear and tension in society, Booker T. Washington tried to convince African Americans to work within the system and just drop the issue of civil rights. He gained favor within the community for his approaches to making a business person out of an African American. Many people tried to follow this example and work on developing a life skill that would enable them to get a job and find their place within society. Women even began to specialize in high school and would graduate with a special honor on their diploma. However, W.E.B. Du Bois rejected Washington's ideas because even as they were working within the system, there was still racial terrorism and lynching all across the South. In 1903, Du Bois wrote an attack against Washington, saying that their rights could not be given up and that they should not accept being an unequal race. Although Du Bois disagreed with Washington's ideas, Washington was still able to become one of the most influential African American men in America. He gained support from business persons such as Carnegie and Rockefeller, and even Roosevelt endorsed his program. Even as Washington's fame grew, Du Bois's insults grew more intense. In 1906, Washington visited Atlanta as it was booming, and he considered it a prime example of what African Americans could achieve if they followed his ideas and worked within the system. Unfortunately, his image was constructed from only a few prominent cases of success, when in fact, Atlanta was one of the most segregated cities at the time. Already, tensions in America were high, but when Thomas Dixon's The Klansman opened in Atlanta, racial tensions mounted. The Klansman reinforced the idea of the lustful, savage African American male preying on the innocent, young, white female. And in the play, the solution was the Klansman, or the Ku Klux Klan. During the opening week of the play, the press reported several false accusations of rape. This caused mass hysteria, and a mob gathered in downtown Atlanta, leading to a massive riot of whites against the African Americans. When attacked, those who didn't fight were knocked down and beaten up, but those who tried to defend themselves were often killed. Walter White and his father lived in Atlanta at the time and were often mistaken as Caucasians. They prepared themselves in case the riot came to their house. Walter was only 13 at the time. This experience led him to become one of the foremost civil rights leaders in America. After the riot, Washington visited Atlanta to salvage the idea that African Americans could live in close proximity to whites working within the system. He tried to still use Atlanta as the ideal system, but Du Bois used this opportunity to show that it did not work. In 1910, Du Bois moved to New York, joined the NAACP, and became the editor for their publication, The Crisis. When he started writing for the publication, he supported Woodrow Wilson because he promised justice and fairness for African Americans, and Du Bois made it clear what the African American population expected from Wilson. However, after Wilson took office, 3 cabinet members were allowed to segregate their departments, and this enraged Du Bois. In 1915, The Birth of a Nation, the motion picture version of The Klansman, was released. The NAACP launched a campaign to have it banned after outbreaks of violence in cities where the movie played. This film also caused a surge in membership for the Ku Klux Klan and gave Northerners an insight into the amount of racism the South experienced. The fight to have the movie banned and reduce racism was still going when Booker T. Washington died in 1915. Despite their differences, Du Bois praised his work, but also pointed out how little progress African Americans had made under his influence. When President Wilson declared war in 1917, Du Bois reluctantly supported him because he knew that the Army was not free from Jim Crow laws either. In 1917, the 24th Infantry, 3rd Battalion, a segregation of African American soldiers, was assigned to Fort Worth, Texas. At the time, the police were coming down especially hard on African American criminals. The soldiers who were stationed there dealt with non-stop harassment from the police for months and finally had enough. On August 27th, the soldiers mutinied and a riot broke out in the streets of Houston, leaving many dead. On December 11, 1917, 13 men were tried and hung, some of which were arrested without cause or not told of their crimes or execution dates. One soldier even requested to be shot as a soldier instead of being hung, and that right was denied. These good soldiers, who had fought for America, had enough of racial discrimination. They decided to fight back, but at the cost of their lives.